What is up guys, and this is part 3 of my Gold Fighter discussion series where I do a rundown of all the gold variants as of update 4.3. Just like in parts 1 and 2, I will discuss their general function as to whether they are more for offense or for defense. Then I will rank them according to priority, ranging from low, mid, and high, or somewhere in between those ranges. So let's discuss the last 5 groups of fighters, starting with Parasol. First up, we have Regally Blonde. She has a lot of HP for a Parasol, and her signature ability is geared more towards defense. She is also a water type, so combined with a Frost Armor Catalyst, she is a decent defender. The one thing I don't like about her is that her signature abilities are really good for defense on paper, but not so much in practice. Her meter drain happens after a blockbuster has been used, so at this point, the damage has literally already been done. To make things worse, it has a 50% chance of completely whiffing. Her disabling ability is also a 2-step process. The AI has to generate a tier and then detonate it. And even if she does pull it off, 8 seconds is not really that scary. She is overall a mid-priority defender, though I definitely don't think she's particularly weak. She could use a buff in my opinion. The meter drain can just be 100% guaranteed, and the disabling duration can be increased to at least 10 seconds. But that's just me guys. She's still decent as she is, but her defensive value is kind of inconsistent. Next we have Starcrossed. She has access to stun resets and blockbuster damage boosts, so she's a really powerful attacker. Though I would say not as good as the next fighter I'm about to discuss. I put her somewhere between mid to high priority on offense, and she is in my opinion the strongest of the elemental exclusive variants. Next up, we have our Resident Eggplant. Her peak damage output with enrage stacking and the critical mass marquee makes her one of the hardest hitting fighters in the game. She is definitely a high priority attacker, especially in prize fights. Now, one thing you need to note about offensive Parasol variants is that they have generally high value because her taunt gives immunity. This helps her play around a lot of annoying catalysts and modifiers. Last Parasol on the list is the original PP Princess Pride. She is a decent light type rift defender with very tanky stats and a signature ability that is relevant to her role. Overall, she is a mid-priority defender, mostly because within the role that she fills, fighters like Meowing Forever and Dreadlocks are just much better choices right now. She could also have doubled up as an offensive counter to Dreadlocks, but with most of her stats going to HP instead of attack, she might have too much trouble taking them down within a reasonable amount of time. Alright, Peacocks are up next, starting with Mean One. With a high attack stat along with access to both buff removal and enrage to get her damage output even higher, she is easily the strongest offensive Peacock in the current meta. High priority attacker. Alright, next up is Untouchable. Unflinching is super annoying, and the damage negation can really mess with low volume, high burst combos. Because of how annoying she gets with Frost Armor, I say she barely makes it to high priority status on defense. Alright, pretty straightforward so far. Let's hope it stays that way. Now that didn't last long, because next up is Ultraviolent. Nowadays, she's just an inferior version of Mean One. They have the exact same base stats, and the ability for her projectiles to not only ignore defense and armor, but also amplify her damage against armored and unflinching opponents does wonders to her peak damage output. The big problem for her is, Frost Armor is a very commonly used catalyst, and the damage reflect just hurts her a lot. Futile Resistance with armored big bands also soft counters her for the exact same reason. Nonetheless, she still hits like a truck, so this makes prioritization kind of awkward. For now, I'm happy putting her somewhere between mid and high priority as an attacker. One last note, just like Parasol, offensive Peacocks are generally high value because they have access to immunity taunts, which helps them play around a lot of modifiers. Now for the last Peacock, we have That's All folks. She is primarily a defender. She stacks evasion when hit and gives the entire team crit resist. That combined with her light typing makes her a very powerful addition to light defense teams. So everyone knows how annoying evasion is, but the crit resist is actually extremely powerful as well. The problem with single element defense teams is that they become extremely vulnerable to the Chaos Marquee. Offensive doubles, especially double-licious, can just shift into one element and sweep. That's All folks is a very effective counter to this strategy, and that is huge. Though I will say, the one thing I don't like about her is that she has a bit less HP than I'm comfy with. Without a substantial HP investment, she could get burst down pretty quickly by a few merry-go-rillas or pinion dashes. The trade-off is, she actually has an above-average base attack, especially for a defender. This is significant because she also has access to armor break and precision when hit. So if attackers get careless with her evasion and give her a chance to retaliate, she has a good chance of prematurely ending the fight. Overall, I consider her a high-priority defender. Let's move on to the Robo Fortunes, starting with Headhunter. She's mostly used for offense and has the highest max base attack among all the Robo Fortunes, including the natural diamonds. Being able to stack precision just by holding block is such a powerful ability to go with her high base damages. With access to a single-hit burst projectile like Theonite Beam, she can actually sweep entire teams without even activating any opposing defensive signature abilities. A lot of newer players tend to underestimate the value of precision. It's more than just a guaranteed crit. You can remove threats like Last Hope, Immoral Fiber, and Killjoy without having to suffer their death triggers, and that is huge. One glaring weakness she has on offense is that her unblockable lasers do not trigger Precision's effect when the opponent is blocking. It's most likely because the game still registers it as a blocked hit, and it's something I really hope the devs can fix sooner rather than later. She also has scary potential on defense with a Precision Catalyst threatening unblockable lasers, but with a really low HP pool, it's not something I would go out of the way for. Headhunter is currently the hardest hitting Robo Fortune in the game, and combined with her utility, makes her a high priority attacker. Next, we have Blue Screen. She's a very powerful defender, gets even better with Frost Armor. She has access to timeless armor stacks every 5 seconds. I don't understand how people say this is bad just because one knockdown removes all the armor. Guys, trying to knock down a fighter every 5 seconds generally reduces your optimized combo potential, which reduces your overall damage. So when you think about it, since the point of armor is to reduce damage, it still did its job even as it gets removed. She can also deny blockbuster finishes with a delayed death animation from her self-destruct, which is huge in Rift. Attackers can also end up taking quite a bit of damage if they end their combos in a vulnerable state. Overall, she's a defensive staple and is easily a high priority fighter. So Terabyte is up next. I believe she was meant to be used on offense. If you can efficiently incorporate head drones into your combos, Inverse Polarity is going to get a lot of miles in specific matchups. The problem is, she has at best an average attack stat. So even in those matchups where Inverse Polarity does work, she could still struggle to close out those fights. On defense, Slow and Power Surge would have potentially been spooky, but 5 whole seconds of not getting hit is a tough sell for me. Overclock gets her effects in 3 seconds, and Vaporwave gets hers in 1 second. I mean, I know idling is different and technically harder to maintain, but a full 4-second differential is a bit unfair to Terabyte. And I really think she deserves a buff in that regard. If they reduce the time to inflict her debuffs to maybe 3 seconds, she would have been a solid mid-priority defender. But as it stands right now, on both offense and defense, she feels like a low-priority fighter. For the last Robo, we have Persona. She's a very good support fighter on both offense and defense. Now, what makes Persona's support particularly powerful is that the buffs she gives are timeless. You can't just wait for these buffs to go away. Opponents have to either force a tag or pop the buffs to get rid of them, something that gets harder to do the more HP is invested in her teammates. She also has Light Catalyst Synergy, which can get really annoying in conjunction to her support abilities if people don't find a way to neutralize at least one of them. Overall, the relevance of her team-wide benefits on both offense and defense, combined with her light element, makes her a high-priority support-type fighter. Next, we have the Squiggly, starting with Shrieker. She has an average attack stat, but with access to 2 stacks of Timeless Enrage, she ends up being a decent offensive fighter. She also has the unique ability of shaving off half the opponent's life bars when they tag out. The thing you have to remember about this is, if they stay tagged out, they heal back some of the HP they lost. So if you want to maximize this ability, you want to be tagging opponents out multiple times. To do this, you have to build her a bit differently, like equipping 2 outtakes or investing in special move cooldown, which compromises her offense a bit. There's also the option of always having Harlequin in your team, but at this point, relying on another gold fighter to inflate her offensive potential feels awkward when trying to assess her individual value. Overall, I would place her somewhere between mid and high priority. However, if you struggle specifically against big band defense teams with a futile resistance catalyst, you might want to put SHRIEKER at the top of your to-do list if you have her. Next up, we have Dead of Winter. Her stats are heavily skewed towards HP, which is fortunate because the core of her signature ability is defensive as well. However, since her ability starts after she dies, its value is dictated by how good her teammates are at stalling. Surprisingly, most of her defensive value is intrinsic. She's a squiggly and a water type, giving her unique synergy with both the Frost Armor and Return to Sender catalysts. Since Frost Armor is commonly countered with debuffs, and Return to Sender directly punishes debuffs, this catalyst combo is, in my opinion, the most powerful defensive strategy in Rift as of this update. If you have two of those catalysts and a plot twisted, or at least aiming to build towards this kind of defense team, then Dead of Winter is a high priority defender. Otherwise, she's much lower than that. Next, we have Poltergust. With the exact same stats as SHRIEKER, she has average base damages, but with her ability to build meter off expiring buffs along with her increased blockbuster damage, she's a surprisingly powerful attacker. Like most squigglies, she does rely a lot on blockbusters for offense, but with access to a taunt that gives immunity, she has ways around debuffs, so this doesn't affect her placing all that much. She can also double up as a scary defender that can threaten a cheeky early level 3 blockbuster, but in higher ranks, very few players would actually fall for that. By very few, I mean me. Overall, Polter's combination of burst damage potential and utility against most buff-based defense strategies secures her a high priority status on offense. Last squiggly on the list is BIO-EXORCIST. Her stats lean a bit more towards HP, but her signature ability was designed for her to be a very powerful fighter on both offense and defense. Having access to percent damage without relying on any debuffs like bleed is extremely rare and extremely powerful. Now, having access to healing without relying on buffs like regen is also very rare and very powerful. Guys, she has both happening at the same time in one ability. And as if that wasn't enough, she can also save herself from death at a very low price of shaving some health off her teammates. And sure, a lot of less experienced players are going to think of her revivability as a negative thing, and that might be true in some specific spots. But in general, when using BIO-EXORCIST on offense, it's always better to have 3 living fighters with low health than a dead bio and 2 living teammates at full health. This is especially true in Rift battles because no death bonuses are big. This also applies to bio on defense. When I'm fighting a fully upgraded bio, 9 times out of 10, I'd rather kill her than shave 25% HP off her teammates. And don't get me wrong, I am aware that there are specific spots where her abilities can work against her, and her base attack is actually too low to matter unless you work hard to substantially increase it. But I do not think they are enough to lower her overall value on both offense and defense. And I know there are people out there who think it's a big brain move to insist that BIO-EXORCIST isn't that good, but yeah, I'm not one of them. High priority fighter. Moving on to our last group of fighters, we have the Valentines starting with Pyro. So she's built more as an offensive Valentine, though her base damages are actually not all that good. Her abilities can also make your play patterns a bit awkward because of the reliance on charge attacks to maximize. Though to be fair, Valentine's charge attacks are one of the easier ones to land. If you're consistently able to keep Wither up and stack Enrage, you get a combination of meter control and decent damage, and this actually puts her somewhere between mid to high priority on offense. But if you can't, then she's definitely a low priority pick. Next, we have Silent Kill. You know what? If someone asks me at gunpoint what the strongest signature ability in the game is, I'm actually inclined to say it's this one. Buffs and debuffs are the most common tools to swing a matchup towards one side or the other. Silent Kill has the ability to cleanse all of her debuffs and all opposing buffs in a single hit. It's such a simple ability, so it sort of goes over our heads most times. Like, we know it's useful, and we know that Silent Kill has great utility. But the more you think about how she can do a one-sided global cleanse in just one hit, the more you'll realize how crazy strong it actually is. Combine that with the ICU marquee and she gives herself a decent amount of sustain. She also has access to meter control in the form of Vial Hazard B. All of these combine to make her a complete offensive fighter. I seriously believe that literally the only thing that keeps her from being the most broken attacker in the game is her below average base attack. The funny thing is, even this was not enough to stop high-ranking players from using her as a sweeper. Silent Kill is not only high priority, she's a fighter I would actually recommend investing multiple copies of in the long run. Speaking of multiple copies, we have Surgeon General. She's actually one of the squishier gold valentines with her stats skewed towards attack. Her permanent enrage is pretty cute, and being able to deal loads of damage late into the fight is kind of adorable. But her true value actually comes from her support ability of providing a full 15 seconds of both immunity and heavy regen to her teammates every 30 seconds. This makes her arguably the best support type fighter in the game and is absolutely a high priority fighter, mostly as an offensive support. I mean, yeah, you can use her on defense, but you'll want to invest in a lot of stats to make her tanky. Her buff support is so useful that you might actually want to invest in more than one so that you can tag her along in multiple fights per rift base. Now for the last gold, we have Last Hope. Get it? Her stats are skewed towards HP and is the tankiest of the gold valentines. She also provides team-wide regen and has to be killed twice. To top it all off, she's also a light type fighter, so you can already imagine how annoying she is on rift defense. She's a great addition to stall teams and is a high priority defender. Now that we're done going through all the gold fighters in the catalog, just some final reminders. First, don't focus too much on how I prioritize the fighters. Instead, focus on the discussions of the fighters themselves. If there's something in particular that a certain fighter brings to the table that you really like, feel free to invest in them even if I ended up ranking them lower in priority than others. Don't get trapped in what I call the tier list mentality, where discussions just end up as a pointless argument about which fighter should be higher or lower. It's borderline common sense that no two people are going to draw the exact same conclusion about every fighter in the game, so why even argue about it? What's most important is the information we have on hand that helps us come to these conclusions. This is exactly why I took the time to discuss each and every fighter one by one. Second is how to use this information in decision making. It's pretty simple. Focus on function first. As a general rule, you need to establish a set of attackers first before you start working on your defenders. So maybe until around level 40 to 50, maybe even higher, you should be concentrating your resources on your offense. So for example, if you're in that stage of the game and you're choosing between a mid-priority attacker and a high-priority defender, you might want to focus on the mid-priority attacker first. But at the end of the day, it still depends on you. Each player will have their own personal favorites, and especially with gold fighters, no investment is ever truly a waste. Lastly, I leave you a quote by Charlie Munger. I never allow myself to hold an opinion on anything that I don't know the other side's argument better than they do. This is the very foundation of my general thought process. When I rate a fighter as high priority, it is wrong to assume that I'm completely ignorant of their inherent weaknesses. It is in fact the complete opposite. I actually am fully aware of their weaknesses, but they weren't enough to lower my perception of the fighter's overall value. It's this perception of value where people are going to come to different conclusions about, and that's completely normal. Anyway, that's it guys. I hope you all learned something. I'm really sleepy. Thanks for watching. That's a nap.